Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Benjamin with the Institute for Health and Human Potential. For those of you that have your video working, hopefully you can see me in the little webcam. You can also see my business partner, JP Fry. If you can see the video and it's kind of spread across the top of the screen, you can go to the little box and click on Layout and click Left, and that will move us over to the left-hand side so that you can still see the screen. If you can't see the video, that's okay. It's not required. As lovely as we look, you'll still have a great experience on this webinar. So as people are signing in, I wanted to just start by asking JP, our co-founder, of IHHP a question. JP, you're head of our research group, among many other things, and have just been involved in the research around performance and leadership in the last 25 years. What's one of your favorite research statistics?
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for everyone joining us. So as you're kind of filing into the webinar, I'm happy to answer that question. I think, Bill, my favorite is the research about kind of top 10% performers. Now, I mean, that's what we do here at the Institute for Health and Human Potential. We try to understand what differentiates the high performers from, everyone else. And I think maybe my favorite is this stat, is high performers extract. They literally take away 3 to 5 times more information from the same opportunity to learn as an average performer. And to me, I think that stat, like it really is, it's my favorite stat because it just says in any situation, a performance review, a 360 feedback, kind of review or process, this webinar, some of us will take more out of the webinar than others of us. And it's kind of like a real challenge, I think, as we begin the webinar to think, okay, we're all busy. You're here. And by the way, the webinar is called The Pressure of Doing More with Less. We're all busy. But can you actually be present to really grab as much as you can out of the webinar? And then it's kind of that grabbing as much, but then it's taking action on it. Mm-hmm. So I think, Bill, that's maybe my favorite stat is, extracting. I'll say it one more time. High performers extract, literally take away 3 to 5 times more information from the same opportunity to learn.
Yeah. And JP, I love that stat too. You and I present a lot, and it's pretty obvious very early on which groups are aggressive learners and which groups their culture just isn't. And it's you just know the groups that are really there, present, working at it, taking away information, are going to ultimately perform better because they're going to continue to learn and get better.
Sure.
Great. All right. Well, we're going to officially start our webinar now, and so I would like to welcome all of you. Your hosts today are myself, Bill Benjamin. I'm one of the partners here at IHHP, my business partner, Dr. JP Fry. And just a little bit about JP. As I said, he is the co-founder of IHHP. He's a lecturer at the Kellogg Business School, or has been a lecturer at the Kellogg Business School. He works with a lot of senior leadership teams and helping them understand, how to drive performance and engagement in their organizations. He worked with Olympic athletes, works with NFL and NBA teams, and just has a really broad perspective. And as I said, also heads up our research group. So he just really, knows a lot about this area of performance and leadership, and of course, pressure. Myself, I have degrees in mathematics and computer science, and some of you might be wondering, how does a guy with degrees in math and computer science come to be doing this work? Well, the truth is I struggled with managing pressure. I struggled in the area of emotional intelligence, another area of work that we do, and it was actually this learning I had the opportunity to experience that just helped me be a better leader and be my best when it matters most. And so I joined the organization. And then for those of you that are seeing the video, you can't see Diana, but Diana is in the background, and she's going to be fielding any questions. She's handling any technical questions that you have. So we'll just have Diana say a quick hello.
I knew you were going to do that, and I should have been unmuted. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar.
Great. Thanks, Diana. All right.
Thanks, Bill.
One quick logistic, and again, for those of you that have just signed in, if you are seeing our videos and they're across the top of the screen, you can go to the little layout button and click left, and that will move us over. If you have questions that you would like us to answer, you can go to the question area and Diana will field those. We have a lot of people registered, great response, and so we won't always be able to get to every question, but we'll get to as many as we can. Then during some of the activities, we're going to be having you fill some things out in the chat room. All right, so let's get going. Thank you to so many of you who filled out the pre-webinar survey. We got great response, and you'll see some of the awesome comments. In terms of some of the statistics, what we learned, and you know, these are, I mean, amazingly powerful, yet not surprising. 92% of you agreed or strongly agreed that you're being asked to do more with less. I mean, that's why you're here. And I will say, it isn't just you, though. You know, we work with many organizations across almost every industry, and we're hearing it from everyone at all levels. 89% of you feel that that pressure of doing more with less is actually making your job more difficult. So there's a real personal impact. And now in terms of the business, 88%, so these are incredibly high statistics. I mean, we have a really good sample size, feel that being overwhelmed is actually impacting your ability to serve your clients. And what's more important than that for a business? Well, the employees are more important than that for a business. 94% of you, so that's just about everyone, feels that that pressure of doing more with less is impacting employee engagement. All right, for some of our research, for the book, we did a research study of 12,000 people, and we found that the pressure of doing more with less is really having an impact. And here's an example. Every day at work, I feel the pressure, like I'm being squeezed like an orange. That's a visceral sense. Every day is do or die. I have nothing left when I get home. And we've probably all had that experience, a long, busy, stressful day. We get home and we don't have as much energy and presence as we'd like to have for our families. I believe it's actually making us less productive because we're trying to do too much. You know, I think, and I'm a leader here at IHHP. I mean, sometimes we try to do a lot and we don't realize that trying to do too much actually reduces how much we can do, not adds to what we can do. And here's one: we're having a hard time meeting customer timelines, and the quality of the work is sometimes subpar. So there's a real business impact of folks feeling the pressure to do more with less.
Yeah, Bill, let me just add to that. One of the things that I'm seeing with kind of individuals who are feeling this, and I mean, your numbers are pretty strong there in terms of the vast majority, and where I really see taking a toll is, of course, at home, but also when we feel like we have to start taking corners just to get everything done, we feel a little less pride in our work.
Yeah.
And that can be quite an eroding kind of emotional cost that I think many organizations fail to see. I think sometimes it's a bit of an invisible impact where you know you could be doing better, you're not, and you don't feel good about that. And I think that has a huge impact on people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, so I mean, you're all on this call because you know that there's an impact. So what are we going to cover today? Well, first of all, this idea, your key takeaways, is the pressure to do more with less. It will derail performance and leadership if it's not managed. The good news is there's some insights you can gain, and we're going to share two insights. And by the way, everything that we're covering today is from the book, Performing Under Pressure, and JP is one of the co-authors, a New York Times bestseller. But two of the insights we're going to discuss is this idea of differentiating between stress and pressure, and understanding the impact of cognitive distortions. For those of you that know IHHP's work, we always like to understand what's happening in the brain and how that affects performance and leadership. We're going to share three strategies, so we're going to leave you with some tools. We call task versus relationship, downsize the importance, and let go of what you can't control. All right, JP is just going to quickly overview for you where this learning fits in our learning curriculum.
Sure. So, you know, our approach has been to take a brain-based approach to understanding performance and leadership. And I think what's critical for you to know on the other end of this webinar is to be effective under pressure, to perform under pressure, to lead under pressure. There's three discrete areas you need to get competent at. You need to get master even. And the first is based on the emotional part of our brain. And this is the idea of managing emotions more intelligently. And we call it the science of emotional intelligence. And so it's managing the emotions that we experience. The second part is managing that other part of our brain, our cognitions or thinking under pressure. And this is the whole idea of, can we think clearly, make good decisions, execute under pressure? So there's emotions, one part of the brain we need to manage. And of course, as many of you know, we have an in-depth assessment training coaching approach to each of these three areas. Some of you have been through some of that, which is why you're on, which is great. So the first is emotions under pressure. The second is thinking under pressure. And the third is this whole area of conversations under pressure. So now that we've kind of been able to manage our brain, now we're able to step into these more difficult conversations. And we talk about the three conversations of leadership, which is really having the important conversations, both the kind of the more challenging, difficult conversations, but also the coaching, the developmental conversations. How can we grow people? How can we bring a developmental bias to our everyday tasks? In fact, that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Get so focused on kind of getting things done that we can forget that, there's also an opportunity to build someone's capability. And so these are the three areas. Today we're going to focus mainly on the idea of thinking under pressure. Bill?
Great. Okay, so we're talking about this concept of pressure, and we're going to be talking about this idea of pressure moments. And one clarification is, when we talk about a pressure moment, it isn't just an individual moment like I have to give a webinar to hundreds of people. It's also, many of you face pressure situations. For a salesperson, it's their quota that they're trying to reach over the year, or a project you're managing with a deadline. So it isn't just an individual moment, it's also pressure situations. So JP, in the book, we define what a pressure moment is. So why don't you share with folks how you've defined a pressure moment?
Sure. Sure, there's three criteria. Number one is when the outcome, and it's all based on outcome, when the outcome is important. And so we walk into an Olympic Games, a Super Bowl, NBA championship in the sports realm, or we walk into that big job interview, or we walk into that really important presentation to the board or to our manager and his or her contemporaries, his or her peers, and we can feel, wow, this moment matters and it's important to us. And there's many reasons why it can be important, and it's really an assessment that we make. But there are three criteria. Are number one, when it's important. Number two, when the outcome's uncertain. We don't know which way it's going to go. And that breeds in us a certain level of anxiety. So when the outcome is really important, we're not sure which way it's going to go. And then number three is when we're responsible for or we're being judged on the outcome. Now, what's interesting is that this third part is actually the more kind of destructive part of pressure, because we're all going to face many situations or moments that are important and uncertain. But it's actually when we're starting to feel judged. We call it social appraisal. When we're feeling judged, that's actually what can kind of turn on a chemical cascade in our system that really puts us in a more difficult place, and it's harder to perform in those moments. So, that's a really key one to understand pressure, all three of them, but especially that third one, in terms of how can we, if we can manage that, how we can be a little bit better than we currently are under pressure.
Yeah, what I like about this definition is, if you were to take away any three of them, the pressure goes down. So if the situation is not important, okay, well, that's not too hard. If it's certain what's going to happen, well, that's easy. And if I'm not being judged or responsible, someone else is, well, sure, I'll pitch in, but it reduces the pressure. So for us, a pressure moment is when all three of these things are in place. So what we'd like everyone to do now is think of some pressure moments or situations that you have coming up based on this definition. Again, maybe it's a project deadline. Maybe it's the end for you in sales. It's the end of the year, or maybe it's your budgeting process. What are some moments coming up? And we'd like you to share those in the chat area. So if you head over to the chat area, you can type in, and we will share back what some of the pressure moments and situations are that you're all facing.
And by the way, as you're looking at your screen on the right, it's where it says type message here.
Yeah, thanks.
That'll, it's funny. When I first looked at this, I wasn't sure exactly where to type in the chat. So if you're new, it's understandable if you're not sure
Yeah, okay.
exactly where to put. That's where to put it.
Yeah, it's in the right-hand dashboard. So JP, I guess a pressure moment for us here is anyone going to go over to the chat room and fill out a pressure moment for us?
Well, luckily Diane is there. She'll plant some in there if no one else does. But actually, we're starting to see.
Oh, you know what? They're coming
Kind
in. They're coming in the questions. That's why. That's
I see.
okay. Okay. My current. Yeah. Wow. Here's one right off out of the gate. My current pressure moment is conducting year-end performance reviews.
Absolutely. I mean,
Wow.
by the way, let me speak to that one, Bill, as you're getting more in.
Hmm.
So whoever typed that in, oh my gosh, you are so not alone. And so many people feel that because we have this identity quake, right? We want to be nice. We see ourselves as nice. And sometimes when we're delivering news that isn't all rosy, it feels like we're doing something that's not nice, and we quake inside. And so you're not alone, right? That's not an easy kind of process to go through and to have it skillfully and with the right amount of edge.
By the way, the funny thing is, I was looking in the wrong area. We actually have many responses. So as you and I were sitting there saying, "Is anybody going to type in?" Uh, it all had. Nancy says, starting a brand new project with high expected outcomes. Catherine says, talking money for a project with a client.
Sure.
Russell, recruiting a new pharmacy resident next week at a conference.
Yeah.
Gavin, the 2016 training plan. Jennifer, presenting to a client with a colleague who is not always professional. Oops. I won't say your last name, Jennifer. Um, uh, wow, Wendy, my largest customer has given notice that they will be leaving. Oh, that's pressure. I have a sales background, so I'm feeling that one right here.
And Bill, let me just stop on that one.
Hmm,
Think about the uncertainty that brings. And again, you know what I think is really important for everyone to know as you're just hearing all of these?
mhm,
There's a psychological term called terminal uniqueness, where we terminally think we're the only ones going through an experience, terminal uniqueness. And I think what's clear from all of our work is that, and I mean it from all levels in an organization, everyone is feeling pressure. Like, I mean, we're going to get to some of the, more on that, but I just think you're not alone is my point. If we were to lose our biggest client, in fact, I remember, we had a big bank 7 or 8 years ago that accounted for, I think it was 38 or 40% of our revenue. And
mhm.
that's great, but it's also a very kind of uncertain place to be. What if, they decide after 2 or 3 or 4 years to say, okay, we've done enough. So I understand that, and I think we're all experiencing that, and so don't feel alone is almost
Mm,
my point.
yeah, yeah. All right, great. Well,
Actually, Phil, if I might interrupt
oh,
here, there's a
please.
really good one here from Mike,
Mm,
and he says tight deadlines before year end and family commitments. So we're kind of
Mhm.
getting it from both, kind of ends this time of year.
yeah,
Great point.
absolutely. I mean, for so many people, while the holidays are supposed to be a time to relax, so many people feel more pressure.
Yeah.
So this is relevant. I mean, the pressure to do more with less isn't just happening at work; it's happening at home for people. Thanks, Diana. That was a great addition. All right, so we wanted to start you off with a strategy because we know you're all feeling the pressure. So we're going a little bit out of flow with the agenda. We're going to get to the insights in a moment. We're going to share 3 strategies. The other 2 will be at the end, but we wanted to jump right in and give you something you could walk away with. Um, and this is what we call task versus relationship. There are some task traps that we need to be aware of. And in particular, when we are under the pressure of doing more with less, our brains are wired to focus on tasks and often non-critical tasks. So for me, for example, if I've just been traveling and I'm getting home and I got a pile of emails and I've got a whole bunch of meetings booked up back to back and I have a moment to get to my emails, I'm experiencing what's called cognitive overload, where I literally, when I see all the emails, I don't have the brain capacity to focus on the ones that require complex thinking. So I just go to the ones that are simple to get done. The problem is those aren't always the high priority ones. So there's 2 traps that we fall into here. One is sometimes not focusing on the high priorities because of the cognitive overload. Now, two, and this is just as big, almost bigger, is in any interaction you're having with any interaction you're having, there's two things going on. There's the task and the relationship. And often we miss opportunities to connect with people, to engage and listen because we're so focused on the task. And in fact, for me, when I'm in that place of cognitive overload and feeling the pressure of doing more with less, that's actually when I start having a negative impact on my relationships. So we want you to really be aware of this task versus this task trap as you approach your pressure moments and as you're experiencing feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, Bill, let me just add one thing to that, which is this. This is that whole idea of a developmental bias as well, which is we're knocking our tasks off the list, knock it off, knock it off, knock it off, right? And we feel certain. I mean, that's great. Don't get me wrong. But if we forget that there's also a relationship either being built or not being built as we're executing the task, or as I like to think, there's capability being built or not being built. Because one of the big things that we need to be able to do is to, as managers and leaders, is to think, okay, what can I kind of grow? What capability can I grow in the people around me so that they can take actually more off my plate, which frees me up? So it's a bit of an investment, and we can miss that opportunity for investment to actually grow people through tasks. And I think that's a real lost opportunity.
Totally agree. So as you're approaching these pressure moments, whether it's the performance review, dealing with the lost client, trying to recruit someone, all those things you talked about, the tight deadlines, and the family, be aware that when you get focused on tasks, sometimes you miss the relationship and shift and say, you know what, I need to focus on the relationship right now. Okay, so coming back into order of our flow, we're going to share two insights. And the first one is this idea of differentiating between stress and pressure. And there's a whole chapter in the book on this, but we actually, I think, have simplified it really well. We all have many stressful moments. Pressure moments are stressful moments that matter. So I might have a lot of email. I might have a big a meeting to prepare for. Those are stressful, but the pressure moments are the ones that matter. Another way of thinking about it is things that are stressful, you might be saying, I feel overwhelmed by the demands placed on me. There's just too much to do. Whereas pressure, it's I'm responsible for producing a specific result that will have a material impact on my success. So I'll give you a quick example just from this morning. For those of you that can see my video, we have my name up above the webcam. Well, for some reason, the platform was putting Diana's name there, and that doesn't look great. So that felt stressful, but was that a pressure moment? Was that going to have a material impact on the outcome of, this webinar? No. So I was kind of able to say, you know what, this is stressful, but I don't want to treat it like a pressure moment. And so I was able to sort of shift. And by the way, Diana was awesome and figured out how to fix it. So we have my proper name. Okay, JP's going to just share a little bit more about this idea of stress versus pressure and talk about something called proportionality.
Yeah, and the idea here is if we confuse stress for pressure, right? If we kind of treat them the same way, we start to react out of proportion. And so we're reacting to everything. And I love Bill's example. It's a small little piece, but it's like if he reacts to that, and then, one other thing this morning and another thing, all as if it's pressure, it's do or die, it's going to have a material impact on my success or my survival. If that's the way he reacts, he won't have any energy left for when he has to do this webinar or when he faces a true pressure moment. And so I think if we're not careful, we can be constantly in this state of kind of anxiety and readiness, on edge, and we waste emotional resources, vast emotional resources, and so we're just not able to be as good. And I'll tell you, I mean, most of our work is in organizations around the world. But as Bill mentioned, I work with athletes, and I see this with young athletes who they're reacting to everything in the course of a day before the actual competition starts. And when they get to the competition, they're actually fully fatigued at that point. And it's especially difficult in the 2004 Olympics in Athens. I was working with John Child and Marquise, Olympic beach volleyball players. And our game literally started at 11 p.m. at night and went, because it was a long game, to 12:30. And so, they woke up at, whatever time, 9, 10, 11, and they had the whole day to think about this critical match to go into, the medal matches. And so it's kind of like a really important piece is for us to be really clear. Is it stress or is it pressure? They both can feel similar, but one is more about, yes, I got to get that done, but it's not going to have a material impact. One is, yes, I need to get a result, and it will have an impact. And so it's important to tease them apart.
And just, because I have a sales background, the example of losing the big client, that is absolutely a pressure moment, right? It's important. Am I going to be able to replace that? Is uncertain, and I'm being judged. So that's a pressure moment you want to bring your best to. But each individual moment, as a result of that, if we then bring that stress or that anxiety to each individual moment, then that's where we start to be on edge and we start to lose our emotional resources. So it's that idea of differentiating the pressure moments from the stress moments can really help reduce the pressure. And I know for me, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I feel like I have too much to do, I definitely move into that more constantly on edge, a little bit of anxious energy, and that's just not me at my best. If I'm at my best, I have a good, positive, enthusiastic energy. But when I'm feeling that overwhelm and stress, it's not a good energy. Okay, insight number 2, what we call cognitive distortions, chapter 5 in the book. JP, would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, pressure has this kind of insidious, pervasive, universal effect on us. And kind of without us really being aware of it, it can start to kind of distort our thinking. And the hard part, and think about this, is that the very thing you need, your cognitive faculties, to kind of assess a situation proportionally, efficiently, strategically, it's the actual thing that gets challenged. So you almost are lacking now the foundation upon which you can then perform under pressure. So it's quite insidious. It's quite brilliant, really, in some ways. And so we have to be really on guard to watch our thinking. And there's two that we're going to talk about. One is chance of a lifetime. The other is magnification. I'm going to actually talk about magnification first. They're very similar. But the piece about magnification is it's almost like that proportionality. That's why I want to talk about it first. And we can make it out to be bigger than it really is. And here's what I want to really push at you as you're doing your tasks. And I look, when we look at all the things that you mentioned around pressure, it's really important, first of all, that we manage it internally, but also that we think about it externally in our organization. What do I mean by that? I mean, is the work that you're doing, are you really kind of prioritizing the most important work? And here's what's important to think about. And what is what I'm working on aligned with the strategic goals of my unit or my organization? Because oftentimes, if there's a misalignment, if it's not really clear what your kind of really important objectives are, we can start to think everything's important, and we can magnify. And there's a reason, because we're starting to think I'm being judged on it, and I feel I'm being judged on everything. And the truth is that we might be judged, but there are some really key kind of activities that align with strategy in an organization. And so sometimes asking your manager a question simply as this, what's most important of all the things here that align with the strategy that we're trying to do? Let's have a conversation around that. Sometimes that can be really important, because you start to see, boy, I'm magnifying all 7 of these things when really it's only 2 or 3 that I need to kind of pay attention or over-manage, in a sense. The chance of a lifetime is interesting too. This is when, again, we lose cognitive kind of abilities to, understand what's most important. But when we're in the middle of a pressure moment, it can feel like all or nothing, do or die. And the thing is that if we take a very short-term view, we're probably not wrong. What I want to challenge you on, right? So if magnification, I'm going to say go to your manager and have a conversation about what really matters. On chance of a lifetime, when we feel it's all or nothing, if we win, great. If we lose, it's nothing. The antidote here is to take a long view. If we get caught in the middle of, oh my God, it's so important in the moment, and we miss the long view, we miss that kind of ability to have perspective. And I'll give you a couple of examples. There was an anchor woman from Baltimore who got fired on her first job. And that anchor woman probably felt, oh my God, my first job, all or nothing, that's nothing. I'm going nowhere. Well, of course, if you take a long enough view, you realize, hey, that was an opportunity to build some skill and learn. And of course, that's what she did. And I'm talking about Oprah Winfrey, of course, who went on to and is still having an incredibly successful career. In the middle of success, it can feel like failure when we get into this all or nothing. So watch out for that. One other quick example is Steven Spielberg, right? 6 times he tried to get into film school in California, 6 times or 5 times denied. On the 6th time he got in. Again, in the middle of that successful career, it could feel like failure. Watch out for that. Watch out how pressure can distort our thinking in both chance of a lifetime and magnification.
Yeah, and I have a great example I got from a client that really is kind of, I guess you say both of these kind of can combine together. I was a very senior VP of a large pharmaceutical company, and he said a new president came in, and he instituted what he called his sales calls for must-win sales. And the president would get the sales team together and the marketing team and the product team and everybody involved, and he would come on, and it was, what do we do about this must win? And as we were explaining this whole thing about pressure and magnification, chance of a lifetime, that executive was saying that impacted everyone. Everyone all of a sudden was frozen. And in fact, he said ultimately because of the pressure that was created, they came up with less creative solutions. And it just ended up that the president would just sort of, not bully, that's not the right term, but he would sort of direct and everyone would just defer to him because it was like, oh my God, if we don't get this sale, and these were $100 million sales, so they were very big sales, but was that one sale really going to make or break the company? No, it wasn't it was important, but it got over magnified and it got created like, well, this is our one chance. And it had a negative impact.
Bill, just a really quick point. In chapter 1 of the book, we talk about how pressure can, ruthlessly diminish us. And one of the ways on a team, and you pointed it out, so I just want to make note of this.
Mm-hmm.
When we're on a team and there's increased pressure, we, as a pattern of human beings, we defer to the most senior person in the room. We do that to hedge risk, quite frankly. But sometimes, think about this, we would defer to the most senior. That's not always, in fact, many times it's not always the most expert person in the room. They don't always have the most specific expertise for the situation we're dealing with. So watch out for that too, right? That we're deferring to somebody who actually is more senior, but maybe doesn't have the most insight. And so that's a trap we can fall into.
That's a good one for me to use on you, JP.
Uh-huh.
All right, so what we'd like you to do is now think of the pressure moment, the pressure situation you identified earlier. Where might you be magnifying the importance of that task or event, just out of proportion with it? And we're not saying it's unimportant, and it's not being dismissive, but it's where we sometimes do exaggerate. So if you could go back into that question area and share with us, and we'll share some of the ways you might be magnifying your pressure moments. Supervisor presentations, yeah. Oh. David says, if I get this wrong, wow. Oh, I misread that at first. Okay, this is actually pretty serious. If I get this wrong, people could die. I mean,
Wow.
But I get the sense that maybe that doesn't happen that often. So if you're in a medical setting, I just did work with Mercy Health, and there certainly are situations where people's health is at risk. But is it always that critical? Terry says I get spinning my wheels when reimbursement negotiations get intense. So again, I'm sure that intensity makes it feel maybe a little more important. Yeah, missing deadlines due to other things that come up that day. As Patrick, lack of task clarity. Again, that can get us spinning and cause us to over magnify. Wow, lots of great examples.
Bill, can I offer something? I also want people to know that there are times when it is pressured, lives are on the line. Yesterday I was at Virginia Commonwealth University at the Health Center and working with their senior leaders there. And as you were with Mercy Health yesterday, I mean,
Mhm.
yes, sometimes it really is on the line. And here's the point. If for the things that aren't as important, we can be efficient, we can be proportional on, it means we have more of all of our vast intellectual, emotional, cognitive resources in order to deal with them so that we can be, as good as we can be in those moments so that we do, the right thing and we do manage,
Mhm.
potential of someone's loss of life. So I also don't want to diminish those either. It is very
Good
true.
point.
Sometimes things are, absolutely pressure filled. Success or survival is on the line.
Yeah.
We just want to be our best that we can be when we do face those.
Yeah. Great point. Robin has a great question, which is a perfect lead-in to our strategies. Robin says, how do you deal with over-magnification being passed down from upper management who are not as hands-on with the daily tasks or clients? So first of all, guilty as charged. Second of all, what I'd like to do is come back to that once we've been through the strategies. So we discussed the first strategy. Now we're gonna talk about the second two strategies. And the first one is what we call downsize the importance. And we've already talked about this with a magnification, but when we magnify, when we, proportionality, we actually create more pressure for ourselves when we exaggerate the importance. So the goal is, and it's easier said than done, but it's so powerful, is to actually consciously under-exaggerate or generate thoughts that minimize the importance of the moment. Now, this isn't, again, being dismissive. You're not necessarily saying this to other people. You're saying this to yourself. So my leadership team, take the VP whose president comes in with the must win. Okay, he's saying that. That's coming at me. You know what? This is important. It's not must win. It's not make or break. So actually just generate thoughts that minimize the importance, particularly if it's being exaggerated. Um,
Bill, can I add something here?
yeah, please.
So, and I'm kind of taking from the question, which was it's being passed down.
Mm,
I mean, we're not on this webinar talking about it. We will on a future one, the whole area of conversations under pressure.
hmm
And what we call, having the last 8% conversation. That's the more difficult part of a conversation.
Yeah.
I think, it's really important for people to gain skills to manage up, right? To manage their managers. And I got to tell you, like, we can do stuff internally, and that's what you just described. But I also think there's a place for, the person who asked the question, I think it was David or, whoever it was, but for us to think, okay, maybe I need to have a difficult conversation up to say, and by the way, in our organization, I feel like we just had a company meeting a couple of weeks ago, and, one of the things, because our team is feeling stretched, right? Too much to do, too little time. And I think they pushed at us as senior leaders to say, maybe we need to have a stop list. And I mean, let's be ruthless about that stop list. And so what I would suggest to you or anyone on the line is to have that conversation with your manager and say, okay, like, I'm working hard and I love to work hard, blah, blah, blah. But everything here can't be, the most critical because we just can't do that. So to really push back is my point. I think there's a real place for that.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So now going back to, you identified your pressure moment or situation. You identified where you might be exaggerating it or overstating the importance. So let's go back to that situation again. Share in the question area. How could you minimize? It says how could you have minimized, but actually going forward, what thoughts could you say to yourself to minimize the importance down to a more proportional level? So let's go back to the question area where we've had lots of great responses and questions, and see if you can identify. Um, Peter, yes, put it into perspective. I love the rule of sixes. Will this matter to me in 6 years, 6 months, 6 days, 6 hours, 6 minutes? And a lot of times, it turns out actually, if I look at the long term, like JP said, it doesn't matter. Mark says second chances do exist. Right. Not
Yeah.
everything is the chance of a lifetime. The person who mentioned, oh, I'm going to a conference to recruit someone. Well, if I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need a new person, that might feel like, oh my gosh, I got this one chance to recruit this person. But yes, it's important, but it's not your only chance. There'll be other candidates. Um, Maria says, think of it as a lower priority, or talk to your manager and let them know it could not be done. That's JP's point, because if it's coming from above, then we need to have that conversation. Great. And Joanna says, embrace the outcome no matter what it is. And that's really to say, it's okay if it doesn't work out perfectly. I'm going to do my best, but it's not the only, I'm not going to, impact my survival if it doesn't work out.
Hey, Bill, let me just add one more in here that I think is a useful strategy is, remember the third part of a pressure situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask everyone, what were the three? See if you can remember, right? It's when the outcome is, remember, important, outcome is uncertain. But the third one I think is a really important one in terms of what we're discussing here, which is when we are responsible for or being judged on the outcome, a lot of times we magnify because we're feeling judged. And in some ways, that's a real important piece for us to think about. Am I defining myself just by this success or not? Because if I am, oh my God, there is a lot on the line. But if I'm not, then that's a way for me to bring that perspective. And again, this is why the internal game is so important. It's like, I think that's why at IWHP we're so drawn to this work, because we're not going to change the amount of pressure out there. We're not going to change the fact that people will judge. We're not going to change the fact that there's important situations. We can change our response. We can build up our center, be more confident, which acts as an antidote to social appraisal. Like there's a number of things that we can do internally that really is, it actually moves to the next strategy, I suppose.
I was just thinking that. Do you mind if I go there?
Yeah, but it's like, the next strategy is this whole idea of letting go of what you can't control. I mean, we can't control the fact that, that somebody is judging us. We can't. We can do something else. We have a lot of other control in other places, building up our center. When the center is strong, we're able to it acts as a shield. And in the third part of the book, we talk about a coat of armor, COTE, confidence, optimism, tenacity, enthusiasm, a coat of armor that kind of shields us from both social appraisal and pressure situations so that we can walk in with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more belief in ourselves. And this is what is really important that we want you to think about. And part of the thing, when we're doing work, whether, with business people or whoever, one of the things that we see, and I see this so clearly, is we try to control things we can't control. And I think a big part of that, and let's really be honest about this, it's because I think a lot of us are perfectionists. I think and it's good intention, we want to do well, but that perfectionism can be really eroding, because everything then becomes, if you look into the perfectionism research, a lot of it is driven by what we're wanting to get back by being perfect. And again, we can work on that. And so watch out for this trying to control things we can't control, mainly because we are perfectionists and we're trying to control and almost over control. There's a place for surrender. And that may sound really interesting to type A people, like, what do you mean surrender? But there's a real place for surrender and I'll give you an example of this. You're managing someone, right? And you're going to get to an end point. And you need to make a decision as a manager. They're going to, if we're clear on what the end point is, I've got to let go of how they get there. And there is a bit of a qualifier, which is what we call preference versus principle, right? They might have a different preference of how they're going to get there. And we got to be okay with that, right? Because we can't be micromanaging. That's just going to be too much for us, talking about too much to do, too little time. Where we can let go is on preference. Now, if they start to cross over into a principle against our organization that might harm the reputation of our organization or something it's lacking in integrity, okay, that's different. Then we need to step in. But if it's a preference, not a principle, that's a really good thing for us to learn to let go of. So again, so we can be more efficient in our use of our energy and focus so that we can do, we're not caught by this doing more with less. So, one of the things that, we've talked about a pressure moment. Think about what are the things you can control and the things you can't control. I want you to think about that, because as simple as this strategy is, and honestly, it is one of the most simple strategies. I feel like all of us, at times, again, it's because the way pressure can get in the way of our ability to think, we start to try to control things we can't, and we let go of things we can't control, such as, Bill, we were talking about this before the webinar. What's something you can control? Because I just love how simple you said this.
Oh, you got to remind me.
Our attitude.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Look, talk to that, because I think that's a really key one that we sometimes forget.
Yeah, and I think a great application of this is with the performance review. So a lot, because all of you who are managers, leaders here on the line, we all have performance reviews to do, and we start to worry about controlling, how the other person's going to react. I care about people, so how they're going to feel. But I also, I need to get some information across if there is a performance issue. So what I can focus on is, how I approach it, my attitude, my approach of having heart and edge and care. So that's really what I like to really look at in any situation. I can control my attitude. I can control my approach, the care and strength that I approach that performance review with. JP, we have a good question here from Karen. She says, how do you deal with deadlines you are responsible for that you are reliant on information from other people that you've not provided?
Oh my gosh. Are you sure that's not somebody on our team talking about me right now? I mean, like this is, right? Like this is hard. We're all running so fast, and sometimes somebody's not getting back to us. And that's a difficult one. Again, I would say, come to our webinar and our training program on conversation under pressure, because, that's where you need to be able to give feedback to say, hey, this is where we're at, and deliver it in a way that doesn't trigger them and get them kind of, not able to respond and not wanting to respond to you. But still, I mean, to have that conversation, I think, is really important. And if it's a pattern, maybe it needs to be escalated. But, I would say have those conversations. That's hard, though. I mean, like, boy, but you know what? Again, that's something you can control. You can control having that conversation. You can't control their response. I hope everyone is on the line right now. I hope you're really getting this. You can only control, your response. You can't control others. It's one of the big things with an athlete, right? We got to let go. I'll tell you one thing we let go of is outcome. In fact, one of the ways we downsize importance is we let go of outcome, because that's not going to be the metric that we use to measure ourselves. Now, that may sound crazy. You're working with Olympic athletes and you're not going to care whether you win or lose. And I'm dead serious about this. We go into an Olympic Games and we let go of outcome. We set our goals at the start of the year, but we let go of outcome. And instead, we focus on what we call integrity of inputs, the process. And we get so focused on playing what's in front of us, all the things we've been working on for the year, our integrity of inputs, we do not focus on winning or losing. And I'll tell you why that's so important. Because when we get attached to winning or losing, we get paralyzed in the moment, number one. Number two, if things aren't going our way in the middle of a match, if we're so focused on that, we start to give up. Whereas if we're measuring ourselves strictly by process, by our integrity of inputs, that's what we're going to measure ourselves on. Whatever happens, fine. But that's not what we're going to measure ourselves on. This is. And when that becomes the measuring stick, the ironic thing is that you actually start getting, the results you actually do want. But it's a different way in. It's all about managing pressure.
Yeah, great. Dominic has a great question. He says, your strategies are wonderful. However, they are based on your ability to be aware of how it may be impacting you in that moment. Dominic, you're absolutely right. This is all about self-awareness. And he says, any thoughts on how you can help ourselves or our teams on being more self-aware prior to the build of this pressure? And I'm going to say, first of all, I mean, you're already doing it. You're attending webinars like this. You're seeking information. You're seeking insight. I'll say something I'm going to say toward the end, which is, there's so much more here that we and others offer, in terms of more extensive training, in terms of assessments, in terms of coaching, in terms of ways to gain awareness. So I would just say continue doing what you're doing, and don't get so focused on task that you don't take time for yourself to learn, to engage, to get better. It's that old conundrum. Well, I'm so busy, I don't have time to learn something that will help me feel less busy. So Dominic, great question.
Bill, can I add one there? I'll try to be quick on this one, but it's an important one. When we need to be in our bodies more. We're in our heads. And the thing about a pressure situation is we don't know, in some ways it's ironic, we don't know we're under pressure, again, because of the way pressure can distort our thinking. Or we start to have reactions that aren't in proportion, whatever. So be more in your body. Dominic and everyone else, be more in your body. That's why doing, mindfulness is so important. That's why, kind of getting out of our heads. And so here's one of the real self-awareness pieces. We call it, I call it my big three. When I'm under pressure, my big three show up. And they are, I feel heat, so it's body first. Number two, I feel a sense of certainty, like I'm right and they're wrong. And number three, a sense of urgency. I've got to act right now. When any of those three pop up, heat, certainty, and urgency, that's my cue, self-awareness cue that says, okay, time out, JP. What's going on here? Do you need to step back? And so find out what that is for you, Dominic, and everyone else. I mean, this is our training now. What I'm really talking about is really understand yourself. Be a student of human behavior, starting with yourself. Because when you make that investment, it really compounds over time. So you're in more pressure moments, and it has less of an effect. And here's a final piece on that. With athletes, again, I'll go to athletes just because I feel like talking about athletes today for some reason. The Houston Texans, who we work with, they won another game the other day, so I'm talking sports. But here's one thing that we really work hard on athletes with. And think about this for your next job interview or big presentation or performance review conversation. As you start to feel the physical sensations come in of, oh my God, pressure. Okay, for me it's heat, whatever it is for you. What a lot of athletes do is they start, because it's not comfortable, they start to wrestle with that. They're like, I don't want to feel that, I don't want to feel that. And they lose focus on what's going on in the moment. So here's a great little antidote. When you start to feel it come on, as opposed to, I don't want to feel that, welcome it, befriend it, say, oh, you're back. I guess my body is getting ready to perform. So it's not going to go away, but if you change your relationship to it with a little more ease, all of a sudden it loses its grip over you. And now you can just focus on the task at hand. Very powerful technique.
I've used it myself. All right, finally, before we close off, I'm just going to share what Leslie has said. She said, self-awareness is key on dealing with pressure or stress situations. Number one, absolutely. You can't change others, only how you choose to react or behave in situations. That's absolutely the one thing we have control of is how we show up, how we engage. Do we give that person the feedback? Do we downsize the importance? Do we attend webinars like this to gain learning? Do we go to training, get coaching? All of those things are within our control. The outcomes, the things we're being judged on, yeah, those aren't within our control. David asked that question, but what about the things we're being judged on, a bonus, a raise, a promotion? We don't control that. We control the things we do that help us get a raise or promotion, how we respond, how we react, how well we learn, how we manage the pressure of doing more with less. All right, wow, I love the conversation and engagement. We can certainly, we'll talk a little bit later how we can take the conversation onto social media. Let me just take a moment here to share what I hope you're taking away from the session. And again, the level of engagement has been great. Is that this pressure of doing more with less, it will derail your performance and leadership if it's not managed. The good news is we're hoping you've gained some insights to help manage it. One is to differentiate between stress and pressure. And don't treat every stressful moment like a pressure moment, or you will use up valuable emotional resources. Two, that there are cognitive distortions and the chance of a lifetime and the magnification that impair our best abilities, cause cognitive overload when we're feeling the pressure to do more with less. All right, and your three strategies: task versus relationship, On task, be careful you don't get focused only on the less important tasks. On relationship, be aware that when you're feeling overwhelmed, sometimes we miss key opportunities in our relationships, and in fact, can even have a negative impact. Ooh, downsize the importance. Wow, because by the way, I was going there this morning with the name. I'm like, okay, if I have the wrong name up there, it's going to look really silly. And I started feeling like it was really big, and then I'm like, no, you know what? If that's not a pressure moment, it'll be okay. And then of course, trust in Diana, who's awesome and figured it out. All right, and then let go of what you can't control. Focus on what you can control, especially your attitude and your approach. Focus on congratulations to all of you for participating in this webinar today. There's many more opportunities to learn that we offer. The book available, Amazon, wherever you buy books. IHHP, we provide keynotes. JP and I, speak at conferences and leadership retreats. We do full day training programs. We have many clients who are certified to deliver our training programs internally, our assessments and coaching. We offer public training programs. So just, right in the menu on our website is our offering of public programs. We're out there on social media. We have a LinkedIn group where we share discussions, Facebook, and we have it on Twitter. So again, if your question didn't get answered today, absolutely just go on whichever your social media platform is, post your question and we will answer it. And finally, on our website under Resource Center, are a whole bunch of free stuff, blogs, white papers that we've written. There's actually a pressure and an emotional intelligence quiz that will help you gain some self-awareness and insight. So again, lots of ways that IHHP offers in terms of digging deeper. And by the way, we do these webinars once a quarter, so continue to participate with us. Okay, reminder of our curriculum. I'll go past that quickly. And finally, wow, a big thank you to all of you for taking the time out in your busy day, because we know you have a lot going on. Thank you so much for joining us. JP, I'll let you say your goodbye.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just say this. We started the webinar off with you're asking me my favorite stat. And, it is the idea that high performers extract 3 to 5 times more information from the same opportunity to learn. And I hope you take something from this webinar, but again, more than anything, I hope you take action. Knowledge is not power, action is power. Have a great holiday season, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, we really appreciate you all engaging. Alrighty, take care.